everybody, Foley here. Welcome to the weekly news recap for the 15th of December to the 18th of January 2026, which doesn't really make it weekly, but whatever, shut up. Anyway, starting off, we got some older developers coming out of the woodwork with their latest and possibly last game. So first up, we have Peter Molyneux, probably best known for Fable, but also Black and White, Godus, something else as well. A lot of God games anyway. So this is his latest and allegedly last game that he's going to make, Masters of Albion. It does very much look like a kind of Black and White thing as well, only without the creature avatar thing, which is probably the more interesting part of Black and White. But anyway, yes, it's a kind of God game. Some kind of interesting things here is that you can drop into the environment and play around as a hero and actually go on quests and things like that. So maybe there's some light RPG elements in there too. Considering your heroes can die, I don't know how much like progress, or maybe it acts like a roguelike, or maybe it's all just procedurally generated or something like that. I don't know. On top of that, then there is a day-night kind of cycle thing. So during the day, you're sort of like building and collecting resources and stuff like that. And then at nighttime, your town, village, whatever, kingdom, is attacked by the undead. So it's a bit of like the original Fortnite idea. Not what Fortnite's become, but the original thing. I don't know. Epic pivoted from that, so we'll see if they still have the same kind of longevity, playability. I don't know. Like, it looks fine. It's clearly they're working with a smaller team. 22 Cans obviously doesn't have the kind of budget that something like Lionhead would have. Despite it being called Albion, it doesn't have anything to do with Fable. Albion, if you're not familiar, is sort of a UK or English sort of Elysium kind of thing. Kind of heaven, I guess. Anyway, moving on. Also coming out of the woodwork, Dennis Dyack is coming back with Dead House Sonata. This is meant to be sort of spiritual successor to Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. It looks a lot more like V Rising. Just going to skip ahead. So it's sort of a third-person, somewhat isometric. No, it's not isometric. It's like a third-person melee action thing. There's clearly some kind of card system at the bottom of the screen that you can see. Now, Blood Omen did have a card system, although calling it a card system maybe isn't correct. It just had a spell system, and they were... the UI was just card-based, but it was not like a randomized like deck or anything like that. They just used cards to display the spells. This has nothing to do with Legacy of Kain. It's IP distinct. They don't own the IP. So this is really meant to be just what would Blood Omen 2 have been if Dennis Dyack was in charge of it. Who knows? It does look like V Rising. It does also look a bit rough. Anyway, some other newly announced game that doesn't have, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have an ancient developer attached to it. Hypnos Maze Chronicle or something like that. I don't know. It's meant to be a kind of Lovecraftian kind of thing. I'm not sure if it's like a first-person, third-person thing, but it does look like it's going to be kind of puzzler. With kind of like strange architecture and stuff like that, and some horror elements to it. Whether there's any kind of like real-time threats, stuff like that, things chasing you through the maze or anything like that, I don't know. This trailer is really more of an atmosphere builder kind of thing. But it looks kind of interesting. We don't really know a whole lot about it. But it's one to keep an eye on anyway. Some games going away though, so Amazon kind of making good on the layoffs from last year and talking about how they were moving away from developing their own games and kind of just focusing on publishing. So their only game, as far as I'm aware, that's still going is New World Aeternum, which is an MMO that was on PC and Xbox, I think. But it will be shutting down roughly this time next year. So offline, January 31st, 2027. It is already gone from the various stores, and then near the middle of July, you just won't be able to buy anything on the game store anymore. As far as I'm aware, it was a sort of medieval fantasy, kind of Elder Scrolls Online kind of thing. But yeah, they're done. This follows a round of huge layoffs. So yeah, Amazon had a massive amount of layoffs the end of last year, and a lot of that was from their gaming division. So it kind of makes sense that they wouldn't be supporting the game either. Anyway, moving on. So this is probably wave 2 for January's Game Pass, which isn't bad. And just have a look here. Brew Bastards, I have no idea what that is. Little Nightmares, the Super Edition. It's like a remastered version of the original. Atomfall is sort of Fallout in a way. It's Fallout, but in the UK. It's pretty good. The Eternal Die is, I think, a roguelike thing based on... Actually, this might be the original game. So the original Eternal Die was more of a... No, I'm reading this wrong. It's something. Hang on. Let me get the actual game. This might be easier. Yeah, Lost in Random. The original Lost in Random is a sort of 3D platformer kind of thing. And the Eternal Die is more of a roguelike, isometric kind of brawler thing. Rematch is from the developers behind Sifu. It's like a third-person football game. It's not unlike... It's like playing football from the perspective of the player, and only the player. You know, it's Rocket League, I guess, in some ways. Space Marine 2, I think. Actually, that might just be OG Space Marine. Yeah, it's the original one, but it's the remastered version. Final Fantasy, the first one, but the Pixel Remaster, we played it on the channel. The Pixel Remasters are pretty good. They have a lot of like quality of life things and give you options to kind of reduce the grind that would have been present in the older games. Star Wars Outlaws is the Ubisoft Star Wars game that everybody panned. It's okay. It's not amazing, but it's fine. My Little Pony game is a My Little Pony game. I don't know. I shouldn't laugh about it, but anyway. Resident Evil Village, just in time for Resident Evil Requiem. So Resident Evil Village would have been Resident Evil 8, and Resident Evil Requiem, that's coming out at the end of February, is Resident Evil 9. So if you want to catch up, although, to be honest, I don't think there's much story from Resi 8 in Resi 9. If you really wanted to catch up, it's probably better to play like Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4. No, sorry, Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. And 4, because Leon is in it. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That'll probably catch you up. Anyway, and then Mio Memories in Orbit is a brand new game. It's pretty cool looking Metroidvania puzzler type thing. It should be out for all platforms like next week, something like that. Over on PlayStation, game catalog refresh also is getting Resident Evil Village. It's getting some other stuff as well. So, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is the team up between the old protagonist of the Like a Dragon games or the Yakuza games, Kazuma Kiryu, and the new protagonist, Ichiban something. I don't remember his full name. His name mightn't even be Ichiban. Anyway, Expeditions Mudrunner game is... Cause it's almost like Euro Truck Simulator, but, you know, it's like muddy 4x4 Jeep stuff. A Quiet Place Roadhead... A Quiet Place The Road Ahead. I think this is a VR game. Or maybe it was going to. I think it was going to be, and then they decided not to because, unfortunately, nobody really develops VR games anymore. But it's a spin-off of the film series. Darkest Dungeon 2 is a little more of a roguelike type game rather than the original Darkest Dungeon, which is a little bit more of... Not XCOM exactly, but it wasn't exactly a roguelike. It was really more of a base management and then sending your guys out on excursions and adventures and stuff like that. Whereas Darkest Dungeon 2, you load everybody into a stagecoach and you're basically on the run from this horrible evil malevolence that's trying to catch up to you, and you're trying to outrun it. It's got a lot more of like immediacy to it, I guess. But I think most people preferred the original. Exit 8 is a sort of spot the difference game. I'm sure you've seen plenty of them over on Steam. Exit 8 is one of the original. It's not quite the original, but it's like one of the better original games. Art of Rally is an isometric racing game, and it's pretty fun. And there is DLC for it now, so they're going to add it to the game's catalog, and then the DLC is then an additional purchase if you want to buy it. A little to the left is a kind of fun puzzle game, and it's mostly to do with people who have, if you really like things just being neat or things being like symmetrical and this kind of thing, when you lay out your stuff on your desk and you like your pencils to be all in one straight line and stuff like that, like me. That's like, yeah, that kind of thing. Ridge Racer, which I assume is a remaster of the PS2 or the PS1 game. Ridge Racer released on the original PlayStation console. Okay, so the original Ridge Racer is there too. Over on the Epic Games Store, the two Styx games, so Styx Master of Shadows and Styx Shards of Darkness, are available for free. The new Styx game, Styx Master of something, I forget what it is. No, it's probably not Master of Shadows. It's Styx something. Styx 3 is out pretty soon. Anyway, those are some games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? You could play Confidential Killings. So Confidential Killings is a bit like the Golden Idol games. Curse of the Golden Idol, Return of the Golden Idol, that kind of thing. And it's like a detective deduction game. For this particular game, it's kind of LA Confidential, Black Dahlia kind of thing. So it's old Hollywood, various murders happening, and maybe there's a conspiracy afoot. There is a demo for it on Steam if you're curious. I thought it was pretty good, but again, it's very much like Golden Idol. So if you didn't like the kind of puzzle game that Golden Idol is, you're not gonna like this. Big Hops. I'm gonna skip ahead here because okay. Anyway, so Big Hops is not unlike like Donkey Kong Bonanza, Super Mario Odyssey. So it's like an old school 3D platformer, but with like a big map. And it does look pretty fun. You're playing Hops, he's a frog, so his tongue is like, shoots out retractable. You can grab things with it. You can use it as a grappling hook. There's various items you can use to like spawn puzzle elements. So you can spawn like a vine, or you can spawn a set of bubbles and stuff to like climb different areas. You're seeing them here now on the screen. There's some third thing, but I don't remember what it is. Anyway, it kind of just leads to a lot of like fun, different platforming elements. You can platform the way you want to in some ways. And reviews of it have been pretty good. Third one. So this trailer is a little bit. This trailer has good vibes, but it doesn't actually show any gameplay. So this is Hank drowning on dry land. Kind of the best way to think about it is it's a kind of puzzle game that has a sort of, what is it, Super Time Bastards or Super Time Bandits or something like that, but it's like a time loop sort of thing, and you will encounter yourself again going back in the time loop, and it's sort of trying to work with past versions of yourself to solve puzzles. Narratively, you're kind of like an incompetent Batman. It's probably the best way to put it, trying to go up against his greatest nemesis, his greatest villain, who he's never heard of. It's very much a comedy game, comedy narrative. But yeah, this trailer doesn't show any gameplay, but it's good vibes. Anyway, games that don't have good vibes, though, and I'm putting this one up as more of a PSA to not get the game, because for some reason it has gotten some kind of marketing from Sony, even though it absolutely should not have. Code Violet is meant to be a Dino Crisis. Dino Crisis we have at home. It's bad. It's a very bad game. It's very poorly put together. It's definitely a vehicle for gooners. Even though the developer, like, we're saying, no, we're not putting it on PC because we don't want you guys modding our character, but like, you guys are doing it yourselves, She's skin tight, the camera's focused on her arse. There's a lot of scenes where it's just cleavage, and There's an ability in the game where you crawl like Solid Snake style, but the camera's just right up our arse. Like, we know what you're doing here. Anyway, on top of that, it's a bad game, just in general. So yeah, don't know why this appeared on PlayStation's channels. Like, it's not quite, Life of Black Tiger terrible, but it's. I don't think anything could be. That's like the very bottom. But it's not exactly great either. It's pretty bad. Anyway, don't touch that. Speaking of don't touch that, Naughty Dog back to doing mandatory crunch, even though they said they weren't going to. Anyway, it is now time for the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So Naughty Dog making overtime mandatory for intergalactic developers. So this is going back a while. This is going back to before Christmas. So Naughty Dog forcing developers of Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet even, to work overtime. This is according to Jason Schreier from Bloomberg. Unfortunately, Schreier's article is paywalled. But quotes from the article is that they've been pushing staff to work long hours to get ready for an upcoming review of the demo by its parent company. Now, they say demo. This demo probably won't be made available to the public. This is a demo for like the business side of things. This is an internal demo. It's parent company Sony. Anyway, so this began in October of last year, and they were requested was to work at least 8 extra hours per week. So work an extra day per week, basically. And that was a request. It very quickly became not a request. Employees were instructed not to work more than 60 hours a week. So, don't work more than 2.5 extra days, because it's also impossible. How am I supposed to do 7.5 days of work in a 7-day week? Don't do more than that. Okay, you got it. You got it, Chief. Whether they were paid for that or not is debatable. And I suspect the 60 hours thing is to not come up against labor laws. At least in Ireland. If you go beyond a certain number of hours, you're entitled to like double pay and stuff like that. So I don't know if it's similar in the US. I doubt it, but I'm sure there's some reason for why they weren't allowed, or where they were asked not to go past 60 hours. Anyway, staff were also told to return to the office 5 days a week for this period, up from 3 previously, sending some employees scrambling to find alternative care arrangements for children and pets. So this kind of knee-jerk return to office thing we've seen before, and it's kind of fucking over people who've moved away, or who have a ridiculous commute, or have taken, maybe one partner has decided to stay home with the kids and stuff like that. Like, it's causing all sorts of problems. And it's kind of interesting that they pushed it to 5 days a week, but they want them to do no more than 60 hours in the office, which suggests, do they want them to cram 60 hours into 5 days? Are they going to pay them for weekends? We don't know. Anyway, there's already mandatory. So this is coming from developers who spoke to Schreier, anonymous. Anyway, they're worried that if this is already happening and the game is like more than a year and a half away, that this is just the beginning of a really bad period of crunch. I guess we'll see. But yeah. There was news last year, I think, that Sucker Punch, another Sony studio, did not crunch to make Ghost of Yotai, or maybe Ghost of Tsushima. I'm not sure. One of the two. And that's a developer that's in the same studio, same stable, if you like. Naughty Dog and Insomniac and Sucker Punch all under Sony's umbrella. And if Sucker Punch are able to do it, why is Naughty Dog not able to do it? And Naughty Dog itself said that it was trying to move away from crunch, and yet here it is, right back at it. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of terrible management decisions, all right, Alpha Bear dev Spry Fox reveal CEOs and staff have taken big pay cuts to finish its biggest game ever after extremely fast spin out from Netflix. So you may recall late last year, Netflix basically decided to get out of video games. So it sold off a lot of its studios, or didn't even sell them off, just shuttered them entirely, making a lot of big layoffs. But in one such case, Spry Fox was able to buy itself out. of Netflix. The issue was that it was so fucking fast that the owners have had to take like pretty significant pay cuts. Anyway, so Netflix divested itself from Spryfox and a lot of other developers and closed down a lot of studios. So Spryfox itself has now, as time of posting, which is this week, currently has nearly 50 people working on its biggest title ever, but is now completely divested from Netflix. But to make this work, we're also making real sacrifices. This is the CEO saying, all of us are taking big pay cuts. This is him, co-founder, and a couple of other of the higher levels. Reduced our salaries to 20k a year. We spent our own cash to buy the studio back, and we are taking all the equity in the new company and giving the majority of it to the rest of the studio's employees. So they're pulling like a Subnautica 2. It's alleged, at least, that the developers of Subnautica 2, I forget the name of the studio now, before they were fired unceremoniously, that the plan was any bonus that would have come through from launching Subnautica 2 early, that money would have gone majoritively to the employees of the studio and not the C-suite. Anyway, in a world where executives tend to make 10 times the salaries that employees do and have 100 times the equity, we want Spryfox to be an example of something fairer and hopefully much better. More than ever, we are all in this together. So, you know, it's somewhat feel good, despite the ridiculous layoffs that would have come from the Netflix ousting. He described the exit from Netflix as extremely fast. We're independent again, but the spin out of this magnitude would have normally taken about 6 to 9 months, and instead it took like 2 or 3. So it's a lot of legal things to try to get squared away in a very short amount of time. If anyone has had to deal with legal shenanigans, you know they take a while. Anyway, for the past 3 years, the game industry has been such a bleak place. Countless companies have shut down, including some truly great studios that made history-changing games. I am very grateful that during this otherwise dark time, something this surprising and hopeful could happen for us. So, Spryfox are currently working on Spirit Crossing. There's a kind of key art for it. It's a little bit Spiritfarer-ish and a little bit Cozy Grove, like their last game. And I encourage you to check out things like Alpha Bear and Cozy Grove. Like they're fun games. They're a bit grindy, mostly because they were mobile titles, but I think they're a fun time. Anyway, hopefully it works out for them. Speaking of hopefully it works out for them, the new owner of GOG discusses taking on Steam, the devil of DRM, and following in Night Dive's footsteps. So this is a fairly lengthy article. It's kind of a summary of an interview that games industry had with the new owner of GOG, who is also the old owner of GOG. So if you're not familiar, GOG passed hands late last year, early this year. Cyberpunk developer CD Projekt Red were the owner of Good Old Games since it began, and they've decided to sell it because they want to focus on developing games rather than hosting a gaming store and stuff like that. So the owner, Mika Kaczynski, I've almost certainly said that name wrong, is also a co-founder of CD Projekt Red. He stepped back after the Cyberpunk 2077 was teased. So like the Keanu Reeves, You're Beautiful, in and around that time, he would have stepped back from the company, still owned like a bit of investment or whatever in it, but was largely no longer part of the whole thing. Anyway, this is a fairly lengthy article. There's some interesting little tidbits in there. It's like strategies about what we're going to do with GOG and why CD Projekt Red sold it and so on. It's like essentially CD Projekt Red want to focus on their games, and they don't want to have 2 businesses going at the same time. And then why did he buy it? And it's basically saying that if he didn't buy it, it would be bought up by some private equity bullshit and they'd strip it for parts and so on. So he still has some sort of sentimental attachment to it. Yeah, I wanted to avoid the situation where GOG is swallowed by some very big corporation, the user database is transferred, the company is closed down, the team is then fired, and so on. So he didn't want to deal with that. Asked about, you know, is GOG now going to try to take on Steam directly? He's basically, no, we're going to keep doing the same thing that GOG has been doing, which is just host classic games or get old games that don't run on modern PCs and try to fix them up and get them running. or games that have an IP that's been orphaned. You know, the company doesn't exist anymore who does own the IP, and then we don't know who actually owns it and try to buy it somehow from whatever legal entity has got it and get the game running again and that kind of thing. You know, it's the kind of stuff that they've done in the past. And looking at Night Dive and how they've done something similar with a lot of older games. Interestingly, CD Projekt Red's back catalog, so the Witcher games, effectively, will still be on GOG for a little while, at least for the next 6 years. And after that, then it'll be a case by case on whether they're going to get AAA games. So yeah, there's a little bit of shots fired here on Steam. I think one of our great strengths is that we don't release hundreds of games daily, 95% of which are really not super high quality. Just look at any of the daily releases from Steam and you go, that's a lot of shit. There's a little bit here about DRM. They're basically saying that it's not good because it's the legal customer is the one who gets fucked over, which people have been saying for years is why these kind of anti-piracy things fuck over the actual person trying to go about it the legal way. Anyway, most corporate people, they make plain stupid decisions. I had first-hand experience of this with The Witcher 2, where our own publisher sued us. So that's a bit going back in time, but shortly after The Witcher 2 was released on PC, CD Projekt Red were getting a lot of complaints from players that the DRM was causing the game to like stutter, drop frame rates and stuff like that, whereas the pirated version didn't have that problem. I was like, I wonder what the issue could be. So CD Projekt Red put out a patch that basically got rid of DRM. And Bandai Namco, who were the publisher at the time, were like, no, you're taking, it's going to get pirated, CD Projekt Red basically saying it's been pirated. It's already been cracked at this point. You're not going to be losing any customers. If anything, you'll gain more customers this way. And it was a big hullabaloo. And I'm not sure how it finished. I think CD Projekt Red had to settle with Bandai Namco. Anyway, kind of crazy. He was able to purchase GOG using his own personal fortune, which is a bit insane. 25 mil. 25 mil for GOG seems low. IMO. But he wasn't the only person looking for it. There were a lot of other outlets trying to buy it at the same time. So it was open. You know, it was an open, what do they call it? Open contract or something like that. Anyway, we'll see how that works out for them. There's a much longer thing there in the article if you're interested. Meta closes multiple studios and lays off staff. So this is bad news for... Well, technically it's bad news for everybody, but it's particularly bad news for players who like VR games like myself. Anyway, roughly 10% of staff from the Reality Labs side of the company. So Reality Labs is effectively the Oculus side, or the MetaQuest side, if you like. And it does seem that Meta, Facebook, whatever, are you know, trying to take resources and assets and move them all into their Llama AI shit. Which means the VR side is going to take a hit. So Twisted Pixel Games and Sanzaru Games have both been shut down. The entire Twisted Pixel Games studio has been shut down, and Sanzaru Games too. Twisted Pixel Games were responsible for the Deadpool VR, which just come out, and was pretty good. Sanzaru did Asgard's Wrath and Asgard's Wrath 2, which were both also two very good VR games. Sanzaru were also slated to work on the next Batman game. So there was the Batman Shadow something. I forget what it's called now. The one with the Rat King. Anyway, that was by Camouflage. And Camouflage have also been hit by those layoffs, though the studio is still open. They weren't going to be making the Batman sequel anyway. Sanzaru were going to be making the Batman sequel, but the studio's been shut down, so that's probably dead too. Not great news. So why is it bad for everybody? This is more of generative AI taking assets and money and investment away from video games. And away from consumer tech in general. And we'll get to this a little bit later, but yeah, these aren't good moves for the consumer in any way. Rockstar union workers denied interim relief at preliminary tribunal. So this is going back to the Rockstar developers who were fired for allegedly leaking things about GTA 6. From the developer side of things, they're saying we didn't. They're saying we were fired because we were unionizing, basically. So union busting on one side or leaking on the other side. So interim pay from a preliminary UK employment tribunal. So if you're not familiar with UK law, which understandable, I had to look this up as well. So the employment tribunal isn't exactly a trial. It's more like a closed bench thing, where there'll be like a couple of judges and they'll decide what's to be done about this kind of employment situation. But the interim pay thing is basically saying, hey, the evidence is so overwhelmingly on our side, the union side, that we're almost certainly going to win. The tribunal is almost certainly going to rule in our favor. We'll go through the motions legally, but we all know we're going to win this thing. So instead of us all having to wait for the payout, because people have bills to pay, just pay us now. Right? That's what the interim pay thing is. It is very rare to win that. And it's particularly very rare to win it when you have such a large number of people doing it. You might win it with like one person, two person, maybe. But with such a big group of people and trying to say that all of them would have gotten paid and all of them would have, and so on, it's a bit too onerous. Anyway, in all the circumstances, the tribunal was unable to conclude that it appears likely that the tribunal will find that the principal reason for the claimant's dismissal was their membership of the IWGB. So this is them basically saying, nah, we're going to do the whole tribunal and we'll figure out what happens there. However, the judge on the tribunal wasn't exactly, saying, oh yeah, Rockstar have a case here. It's like very much saying, this is some bullshit, but I can't definitively say you are going to win the tribunal. Anyway, no one was suspended. There were no disciplinary hearings. The claimants were not given the opportunity to respond to allegations of wrongdoing before the decision was taken to dismiss them. Comments relied on by the respondent to dismiss the claimants were obtained without the knowledge of employees using Discord, described by the claimants as covert monitoring. So this is basically saying Rockstar didn't go through any disciplinary proceedings. They didn't allow people to state their case or anything. They just fired them. So it's extremely suspect. But again, the bar for interim pay is quite high. It was unlikely they were going to win that anyway, but you might as well give it a shot. Moving on, again, continuing with our union busting, Ubisoft also is being accused of union busting. It had nothing to offer. Halifax Union lambastes Ubisoft after first talks following studio closure. So Ubisoft Halifax, which is not in the UK. There is a Halifax in the UK, and that's what I thought it was, but it's not. It's in Canada. And I was very strange. I was really curious why the Canadian Union was going to bat for a UK studio, but now I know why, because there's a Halifax in Canada too. Anyway, so end of last year, Halifax unionized, or voted to unionize. And then very quickly afterwards, Ubisoft closed the studio and didn't give any real reasoning. They just said, "Oh, market reasons. Don't ask any further questions," kind of thing. And the union representatives, the CWA, were like, "No, you got to do better than that. We're gonna have a meeting, and you're gonna bring your evidence, and we're gonna discuss this." And this article is basically saying that they didn't bring any evidence. They didn't have any proof to say that market reasons are why, there's a downturn in profit making, or there's been a drop in productivity at the studio, or anything like that. It just seemed like Ubisoft arbitrarily closed it down. Not great. CWA accused Ubisoft of failing to adequately prepare for its first meeting with union representatives. Just weeks after the majority of workers at the Canadian studio voted to unionize, the studio was shut down. So they're calling on Ubisoft lawyers to prove the closure was based solely on financial necessity. Ubisoft said they would bring evidence to that meeting, and it turns out that whatever evidence they did bring was not satisfactory. When Ubisoft's lawyers asked what we want, we told them our priority was getting everyone real jobs, either remotely or at other Canadian locations. We also explicitly raised the issue of people on parental leave being treated incredibly unfairly by being told They don't qualify for the proposed 2-month severance notice pay in full like everybody else. Fuck you, Ubisoft. Anyway, CWA Canada has filed a labour claim against Ubisoft. Directly accuses Ubisoft of torching Ubisoft Halifax to keep out of the union. We'll see where that goes. There has been a legal dispute, so there'll be a case trial may or may not happen. Who knows? Ubisoft not exactly doing well financially currently, despite the investment from Tencent and the Savvy Games Group, and it does look like they're trying to spin off some of Ubisoft to something else. This might have been just a coincidence that they happened to unionize at the same time. They were already planning to close the studio, but it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Anyway, shovelware is a bigger problem than ever. Platform holders need a robust response. So this, again, is another lengthy article from Rob Fahey, or an opinion piece. I'm not going to go into the full thing, but this is mostly talking about how Sony recently delisted a ton of just shitty trophy boosting games. They're kind of just like hold a button and get 100 trophies and a platinum. It's just for boosting number go up, and there's thousands of them on the store. And Sony has delisted like a couple of hundred. I think there was a news story going around that it was 1,000 games. Technically, it's 1,000 SKUs of the game. So that's like running on PS4, running on PS5, running on PS5 Pro, running on PS4 Pro, and so on. These are all different versions of the game. So when you take all of that into account, it's really more like a couple of hundred games rather than 1,000. Still, Sony has tons of this shit. And it's not just from this developer. There's a load of like AI slop games out there. There's a load of just key art on the PlayStation Store that is obviously AI generated, and the game itself looks nothing like the key art because it can't. It just can't possibly do that. And Sony aren't alone in that. The Nintendo eShop has plenty of this stuff as well. Steam, as we said earlier, 95% is low quality every day. Anyway, this opinion piece is kind of talking about that and how discoverability for indie games, discoverability for other games is obviously going to take a hit. Discoverability has been an issue for a very long time. Generative AI and asset swapping games is going to make that way, way worse. So, some curation would be good. Maybe consider that. Okay, anyway, these last couple of articles, I'm going to go kind of rapid fire through them. You can read them at your leisure if you like, but this is mostly, again, generative AI. Because a lot of these articles that we've gone through, not that one, not that one, not that one, hang on. This one is generative AI is the reason for it. So Meta taking money away from its video game division and giving it into the generative AI. That's not one. That's not one. Okay, I'm going to be saying a lot of these. This one is generative AI based. And then Stellar Blade Dev believes one person can perform the work of 100 people, which is bullshit. Just look at your own job. Assuming you do a job that can actually somewhat be replicated, faked by generative AI. I don't know. Generative AI, as far as I know, can't unclog a toilet right now. I think. Can't rewire electricity and so on. But, it can pretend to do art, and it can pretend to write a novel, and it can pretend to do coding and so on. But it's not doing the job of 100 developers. It's not doing the job of 100 authors and so on. Not even close. Not even remotely. 100 CEOs, yeah, probably. Because he's the CEO. We're talking about here. It says Stellar Blade Dev. It's the CEO of the company, who's not a developer. Anyway, he's talking about that, saying like, yeah, it can definitely do the job of 100 people. No, it can't. Not even remotely. Then similarly, head of Kingdom Come developer, forget the name of the studio, also saying that, oh yeah, AI is here to stay, so we better just get on board with it. And again, it's a lot of self-serving things of how can I not pay my employees, and how can I, it's okay for me to use generative AI and so on. This was specifically in response to the backlash from Larian. We'll get to that in a minute, but Larian's CEO, Baldur's Gate 3, Divinity, said something similar about generative AI and got fucking roasted for doing it. So roasted and so bullied that they backtracked on it. Anyway, on the opposite side of the Gen AI hype train is the opposite side of it. Is one indie developer decides to delete his game because his girlfriend said generative AI is gross. It's not quite exactly what happened. It was more a case of, generative AI does affect more than just replacing artists. It's also taking power out of the hands of labor. It's kind of destroying the kind of art form itself. It's environmental impacts and so on. There's a lot of it in there. I just thought it was funny because his girlfriend told him it's gross. Anyway, also Hooded Horse, publishers of Manor Lords, I think, and a bunch of other games are basically saying, we won't publish your game if there's generative AI in it. If I sound frustrated, it's because honestly, all this thing has done is made my life more difficult. There's a strict ban on generative AI art. I hate Gen AI art. It's now written into our contracts. If we're publishing your game, there can't be any AI assets. And then there's more about like why they're doing that, what's the ethics behind it, and so on. Anyway, this is kind of the Larian thing. So the end of last year, Larian CEO was saying, yes, we're using generative AI for like concept art and ideas, and very clearly in the very early stages, the preliminary stages, pre-visual even, of the game, but that like generative AI wouldn't make it into the final game. They'd make sure it isn't in there, despite a couple of games being caught with generative AI art still in the game. Even Expedition 33 had some generative AI art still in there, and the developer, forget the name of the developer now, did remove it, but it resulted in them losing a Game of the Year award because of it. Now, whether they give a shit about that, they already won some other Game of the Year awards, but the point is there is a backlash from players about it. Anyway, following recent community blowback, so the original interview was just talking about Divinity, and it was kind of almost a throwaway line to say that yes, we're using generative AI to do concept art, whatever. And that was the thing everybody latched onto. You didn't really latch onto the thing about Divinity is going to be a turn-based game, and it's so far along in the timeline that you won't have to have played the previous Divinity games and all that kind of stuff. No, people are like, you're using generative AI for art? You? The Baldur's Gate guys? Come on, what the fuck are you doing? And the CEO, Sven, said, everyone at the company is more or less okay with the way we're using it. A follow-up interview with some developers there were basically saying, we have to be okay with it because it's our job. Or our jobs are on the line. We can't really push back against it. This is coming down from on high. And we can't really afford to speak up about it because they might lose their job over it. Anyway, after the AMA, so there was an AMA, because there was such a big stink about it, they basically said that, okay, we're going to refrain from using generative AI tools during concept art development as well, and it won't be in text and such as that. They haven't quite gone back entirely on generative AI. They are still planning to use it for other things, which it still isn't great. Really it should just be, I don't want to touch it. Anyway, we will not generate creative assets that end up in a game without being 100% sure about the origins of the training data and the consent of those who created the data. Then you can't use generative AI. Unless you're planning to roll entirely your own LLM and entirely your own antagonistic AI, you won't be able to do this. If you're using anything off the shelf and think that, we're just going to put our own training data into it. No. It's a black box. You don't know what's already in there. You won't be able to do this. There won't be any text generation touching our dialogue, journal entries, or other writing in Divinity. They are still saying they're going to be using it for like, what do you call it? PowerPoint presentations and that kind of thing. But it's still not great. Like the original reason that they were saying that it's okay to use it for concept art, and it's okay to use it for placeholder text, and it's okay to use it for placeholder assets and so on, is because they're not important. right? Placeholder assets aren't important. Apparently concept art isn't important, because it'll be replaced eventually. And the only thing I could say to that is, if it's not important, then just put in text that literally says placeholder text, or put in a placeholder art assets that's just a big pink square. If it's not important, you know, it's either not important, in which case you don't need generative AI to do it. You could very easily do it much faster by just putting out gray blobs. Done. It's extremely easy to export a gray blob 3D model. It's extremely easy to just copy paste placeholder, 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 placeholder. You know, very, very easy. You don't need generative AI for that. Or it actually is very important, and in which case you still don't need generative AI, or shouldn't use generative AI, because if it is important, then a person should be doing it. Which is it? Anyway, this last article, Dev Backlash over Larian CEO's Gen AI praise, is about leadership, not just tech. This is going more into the kind of power imbalance that tech CEOs would have, game CEOs would have, to say that, no, you have to use generative AI. It's the future, even though I don't know what your job is and have no idea how generative AI would help you in your job. I'm still going to say you have to use it because everybody else is using it. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to get left behind. And they said the same thing about fucking blockchain and Web3 and 3Ds and what have you. And what happened? No, did anybody get left behind? No. If anything, people prefer artisanal, bespoke, custom, human-made things. You know, they tend to be the better quality stuff. That's the stuff people really want. Anyway, again, this is a fairly lengthy article, so I won't go through the whole thing. But this kind of developers are tired of being told they need to use generative AI is sort of at the heart of it, and why the blowback came when it did, because Larian CEO had said the same thing in April last year. Same thing, that we're using generative AI in the concept art stage, the previs stage, the like make PowerPoints and stuff like that, summarize meetings, that kind of thing. And there was no blowback on that. But 8 months later, I have to do the calculate in my head there. 8 months later, massive blowback. What had changed? What had changed is the browbeating from other industries, other tech CEOs, other tech pioneers, other marketing, having Gen AI shoehorned into things that doesn't belong there, having fucking Microsoft Office changed to Microsoft Copilot, like all of these kind of things. Trying to be force-fed this idea that it's the future. Like it just hit a final straw situation. Anyway, there's a much longer article, and it's a very good read. I'd encourage you to give it one. And I am trying to like highlight more of these longer opinion pieces, but I appreciate that they're not something that we can kind of sit and just read through together. So think about it yourselves and give it a shot. And we'll leave Big Hops to play, I think. Anyway, that was your news for the 15th of December to the 18th of January 2026. I know it's meant to be the weekly news recap, but that's like a month. I took Christmas off. What do you want from me? And as you saw, it wasn't a whole lot of news or a whole lot of updates or anything like that coming out during that time off. Hang on, let me get actual gameplay back up again. All right, there we go. Okay, so on the channel, you may have noticed beside my face here, I've removed Twitter. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I had been on it for a while, mostly just to sit on the name, because I didn't want anybody else having the name. But kind of the recent Grok shit, I've decided to just go off it entirely. So yeah, if you were following me on that, I'm not there anymore. I'm over on Blue Sky and have been for a good while now. What else? Other things. Oh yes, there's a video up on the channel, games coming out for 2026. Watch it, because I haven't done like any kind of fun editing in a long time, and that video also took a really long time to put together. It's like 60 plus games on it. A lot of research and a lot of grabbing assets and stuff like that. So I'd appreciate it if you give it a look and, you know, let me know what you think about it and what have you. Getting back to playing games, like under my face, there's been current Let's Plays and what have you, and that's been there a long time. They're not in any way current Let's Plays at this stage because it's been so long since I've started playing them. So I am hoping to get back to that now, 2026. Might be February before we actually get back around to it, but that is the plan. Where is the gameplay? There it is. But yeah, that is the plan, to get back to them, and I had kind of wanted to have like a Resident Evil series done by the time we get around to Resident Evil 9, but that's probably not going to happen now. Maybe by the time Final Fantasy 17 comes out, I'll have all of the Final Fantasies done. I don't know. But yeah, we're probably going to jump into a Resident Evil, and I might just do like a series of one-shots for like games that have come out recently. And by recently, I mean like a year ago. Because there's a lot of them sitting in my backlog, and I'm not getting to play them because I'm waiting to do videos of them, and then I don't do videos of them, and they sit in my backlog for years. So yeah, I'm going to try to fix that. Anyway, that is the plan for the year, more or less. Or the plan for this opening, shall we say, a couple of months. So we're going to do Resident Evil, Final Fantasy 6, Resident Evil Revelations 1, and then Resident Evil 6 maybe at some point. And then try to do just like a bunch of one-shots. I might give Big Hops a shot as well and do that on the channel, because I'm liking what I'm seeing there for the game. Anyway, yeah, give that video a look, please. Maybe consider joining the Discord and that kind of thing. Anyway, I'm going to head off. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye. Nope, that's the wrong button. This button.